How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, where you get to know a little bit more about people, passions, and all things business. Today, I'm sitting across someone that I thought that, I don't know, I didn't know if I was going to be able to see again. Mr. Matt Rogers, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Great to be here.
Great to be here.
Fantastic.
Good to be breathing.
For those that don't know, I want to give a little bit of backstory. Matt fell ill late last year. When was that?
Early January.
Early January.
Late January.
Late January.
Yeah.
Okay. So early last year.
Yeah.
And has been in the hospital for an extended period of time, the extended stay version, if you will, and has had multiple things that have he's been challenged with. And he's sitting across from me today, out of the hospital, super ecstatic and inspired by what you've gone through. And I guess today's show is really to talk a little bit about what all of that it was.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite sayings is life's about timing. And it's all in God's time. And you can see God's hand working in the progression of everything that took place with me. We got sick. Well, I got sick back in January 19th. It was when I tested positive for COVID. Around 4 days later, started having some shortness of breath and uncontrollable cough. Had my wife take me up to the local ER here in Statesboro. They did a wonderful job. Kept me up in the ICU for about a week and a half. Noticeably watching my oxygen saturation go down every day. And even when they had to bump up the oxygen rate to where on the few days before I was intubated, I was on a non-rebreather, which is 100% oxygen. And I was still watching. And with me being a flight nurse and paramedic for years and years, I knew the trends were heading in the wrong direction. And
At that point, had you helped anybody that or serviced anyone that had COVID?
yeah, we were flying COVID patients to bigger facilities that could better handle the situation.
And that's out of air evac in Statesboro.
Out of
right?
Statesboro, correct.
And so you saw kind of the trends. What did that feel like? Because usually you are delivering that service to the patients.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I knew it was bad, heading in the wrong direction, to the point that I actually told the medical staff that they're going to have to intubate me because I can't keep my own oxygen saturation up. And they all agreed. And so it's intubated here at East Georgia and transferred by ground to Memorial in Savannah. My flight crew that was on at 95 here in Statesboro actually rode in the back of the ambulance with me because the weather was bad. They couldn't fly. So they shipped me by ground and with my flight crew, got me down to Memorial. Stayed in Memorial around 21 or 22 days, somewhere in that neighborhood. After the first week, they called palliative care in to speak to my wife, to let my wife know that I was going to die, and there was nothing they could do about it. And they had 3 different doctors come in trying to explain to her that I was going to die and to get her to sign a DNR order, which is a do not resuscitate order. But she wouldn't have any of it. And
You were not aware of this at this time.
no.
And I wanted to clarify. Intubated? What does that mean?
That means they actually put a tube into your trachea and attach you to a ventilator that actually breathes for you.
Got you. But you were. Are you conscious during this time?
No.
No.
I'm
have to be-
sedated.
sedated.
Yeah, I was completely sedated. I do not remember a day at Memorial. The last thing I remember is telling them I needed to be intubated at Statesboro, and the next thing I remember is when I woke up at Mayo.
So we're back at Memorial, and they've kind of like asked 3 times to kind of figure out, okay, do not resuscitate, And then so what, I guess she fought for you.
My wife wouldn't. She said that's unacceptable because all of my other functions, my liver functions, my kidney functions, everything was normal. The only problem that I had is COVID had just wrecked my lungs, basically. And luckily, I had an ace in the hole at Mayo. I had my first cousin actually worked in sonography at Mayo,
Okay.
and she was good friends with one of the lung doctor's PAs,
Okay.
and actually spoke to her. She spoke to her boss, and she said, "Well, let's get his medical records. I think we can get him down here."
Oh, so at that point, how did she was she made aware of the situation at hand?
Uh,
Did your wife reach out to her, or how did she know that you were?
yes, well, they'd been keeping up with me,
Got you.
since I've been ill, and I also one of my good friends I graduated high school with was an administrator down at Mayo, and he said he didn't have anything to do with getting me down there, but I don't believe him. I think he did have something to do to get me down there. But the amazing thing about the story is one of the nurses at Memorial that was helping my wife with getting all the transfer prepared and everything. Her name was Miracle, and
Wow.
yeah, you can't make this stuff up. And so anyway, my wife went down to the administrator's office to get my record sent to Mayo, and it was late in the day, around 4:45, and she said, "Well, I'll send them in the morning when I get back." And she goes, "No." My wife said, "No." She said, I'm not going to leave this office until I see with my own eyes that you have sent my medical records to Mayo." So anyway, sent them to Mayo. Mayo said he needed to be on ECMO, which is extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, where they actually reroute your blood through a ECMO machine that oxygenates your blood for you. Actually works as your lungs.
Mm-hmm.
And but they didn't have one available. All of them were being used. The next morning, miraculously, ECMO machine showed up at Mayo that was supposed to go to another hospital. And Mayo said, "Well, it's here. Let's use it."
Mm-hmm.
So they opened up another ECMO room, called down to Memorial and said, "We're ready for him. Send him."
Wow.
They called my flight crew here in Statesboro. There were some thunderstorms in the area. And my pilot that was on duty said, "There's a break in the storm. I think we can get him through." And so they went down to Savannah. They loaded me up. They flew me down to Jacksonville. And the thunderstorms sort of parted like the Red Sea. And they went right through the middle of them and got me down to Mayo. When I arrived at Mayo, my friend that I told you about that graduated high school with me, it was on a Saturday morning. He was actually there on his day off, waiting on my arrival to get there. And when I arrived, they immediately took me to the OR to get prepared to hook me to ECMO. And my blood gases at the time I arrived to Mayo were not sustainable to life, but I was still alive. Mm. And one of the lung doctors down at Mayo, amazing guy, said I probably had 2 or 3 hours left at most if they wouldn't have gotten me down there when they did. Mm-hmm. And so they got me on ECMO. They woke me up several days later after my blood gases leveled out and everything was working the way it should, and immediately started physical therapy on me because my muscles had atrophied away to nothing. My diaphragm muscle had atrophied. That's your main breathing muscle. It had atrophied away to nothing. So they started physical therapy immediately, even before I got my new lungs.
So I wanted a clarification. When you got there, you said you had the doctor said you had maybe 2 or 3 hours to live. What kind of, I guess, once you got there, was it the machine that kind of like was able to sustain you for a bit longer, or what
Yes.
happened there?
Once they got me
on the machine, that kind of like continued to push through.
Yeah,
Okay.
once I was on ECMO, they actually pushed me through.
And,
Yeah.
and were
Got
you
me.
conscious at this point? Like,
No.
you still not conscious?
Still not conscious. No.
No idea what's going on.
No.
Do you recall anything during this period? Were you dreaming? Were you kind of
Oh
like?
yeah. I had some very vivid dreams of my grandparents, and it was just as real as me and you sitting right here.
Wow.
And yeah, it was amazing. And I could hear people talking, but I couldn't see anyone. But it was just a miracle the way everything worked out for me. When so many other people have died from the disease and or the virus, so to speak. But
So you started, the physical therapy that you're kind of like going through that. They're building up your muscle. At what point do you start to regain consciousness, or is there at that point?
well, when they woke me up, I was still on a lot of pain medications and pretty sedated. But I was aware where I was. I knew my wife was there with me. And the main reason why they wanted to start the physical therapy immediately was because I had to be able to stand up in order to get put on the transplant list. So after a couple weeks of physical therapy, they called the transplant team in. They actually came and stood at my room and watched as the physical therapist, got me to the edge of the bed basically, and to where I could stand up on my own. And I do remember that. And I was gritting my teeth and pushing with everything that I had to even just stand up. But I did. I stood up, and they said, "That's good enough." And so they put me on the transplant list. And I think I arrived at Mayo on February the 27th or 28th, somewhere around in there. And it was April 19th before they found a set of lungs and before my transplant. So it was actually about a month and a half that I stayed on ECMO at Mayo before transplant.
So take me to the point when you were standing up. When you were obviously in a ton of pain. Your muscle had atrophied. Right?
Yeah, I had. Yeah, I was.
What were you thinking about to make you get to that point?
Well, I had in my mind, if I don't do this, I'm never going to leave this place. And that crossed my mind a lot of times there. I laid in that bed, for months and months, thinking that I'm never going to leave here. That's what I thought. But thankfully, the physical therapist and occupational therapist at Mayo, they pushed me through the pain and did a wonderful job. And I thank them for pushing me through it. Like Marine Corps drill instructors at Parris Island.
They were in your face?
Yeah, they, some of the sweetest and meanest people that I know. I know you're throwing up, Mr. Rogers, but we're going to start PT. Just do as much as you can. And I would stand up and at first I took like one step, and they were happy and all applauded for me. I sat back down. The next day I took about 3 steps. Next day I took about 7. Next day I took 10. Next day I walked out of the room and turned around and came back.
I love that.
Next day I went a couple more steps down the hallway, and that's how it progressed for a total of, from the time I was in the hospital to the day of discharge, was 227 days.
What were you in good health before everything happened?
Yeah. Basically I was taking one medication, and that was for arthritis. Was the only medication that I took. And but that was it. And my blood pressure was good. But the thing about it is Dr. Erasmus did tell me that I was the sickest person they've ever done a lung transplant on.
Wow. And sickest in terms of like just your overall health and muscles and all your operations, or what? How did he make that determination?
Well, just from my vital signs,
Mm,
basically. And because most of the people that they do lung transplants on are cystic fibrosis patients that, they schedule, hey, you're going to be here in 3 weeks and we're going to do your lung transplant. Just show up that morning.
yeah,
And so they don't
gotcha.
have time to lay there and get atrophied away. So by the time they come to, their body's still pretty functional.
Mm-hmm,
But see, mine wasn't.
mm-hmm.
And it took a long time to for my diaphragm to re-engage, and it's getting stronger and stronger.
So you got onto the transplant list, and then I guess once you stood up, they said that you could be on the transplant list, right? And then there was a couple days in there where you're gaining strength, you're getting stronger. How much time before the transplant actually happened?
Um, they probably came in the middle of March. It
Okay,
was. So the transplant team just to see if I could stand up, and it was about 3.5 weeks later.
okay, about a
Um,
month.
yeah, right at a month, they found some lungs for me.
And so once they said, "Hey, we're gonna go ahead and get you a new set," I guess obviously elated, right? Because at that point, your lungs were they completely shot?
Yeah, yeah, they said they were beyond repair
Hmm. So at that point, how are you getting your oxygen? Was there
through the ECMO.
okay through ECMO was helping with that? Got you.
It was acting as my lungs, basically.
Hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so we're at the point where the transplant happens. Something happens on the table while you are opened up, while that's happening.
Um, well, the surgery lasted 15 hours.
Wow.
And one of the things they did is they told me before I went in, they said, we've done a heart cath and you've got a 60% blockage in one of your coronary arteries. And they said that probably won't bother you for another 10 or 15 years, but being we're in there, do you want us to go ahead and fix it? And I said, absolutely.
Hmm.
So as far as they know, I'm the only person on the planet that has had a lung transplant and a cardiac bypass in the same surgery. And
That's wild. I think it speaks volumes to, I guess, everything that's happened to you, but also to the Mayo team.
Mayo's amazing. It really is.
I mean, the care that they take, and the fact that you are sitting across from me right now is honestly just amazing. I've paid attention to your wife's Facebook, and she's done an amazing job at keeping everybody updated. And from the sidelines and from far away, we've just been cheering you on. We've been praying for you. We've been, just hoping that that this day would come, that you're back with us. You know, obviously, this is kind of like more on the health side, but with all these challenges that people face, obviously the ones that you face are a life and death situation. I guess what words of advice would you give to somebody that is faced with something that is a hard decision, or is challenging?
Well, one thing that I have learned is, I've been so close to death that I told my wife, I said, I don't fear it anymore. I don't fear dying.
Mm,
And one of the main problems that a lot of people have is they fear living. And you can't do that either.
mm-hmm.
You got to live fearless. That's the way you have to do it.
That's right.
And because I know even when I'm going from here, that I know where I'm going to be, and there's no fear in that.
Mm.
So, and I thank God every day for allowing me to wake up and take a breath. And the thing about it is, someone else had to lose their life in order for me to have to keep mine.
That's right.
And that's the way the donor system works, and it's just amazing. It's just amazing stories that I hear from so many different people. I went on the Mayo Zoom chat with the lung transplant recipients yesterday, and there was a lung transplant patient that actually died for 13 minutes during the procedure. And he said during that 13 minutes, he was in a strange living room with this beautiful young lady, and she was just waiting on him hand and foot, and she made brownies for him. And then she walked up to him and said, "I'm going to breathe for you now. You got to go." So, and when he met the donor family and saw the picture of her, he fell to his knees because it was his own donor that he saw in his time, in his 13 minutes. Yeah.
How do you explain like that? It's health is such a science-based thing, right? And then you go into these moments where it's something that's more than that.
Yeah. Well, every one of the doctors on the lung team at Mayo are very faithful men, very godly men, every one of them, and because they've seen it. And that's one good thing, when they come in the room with me and some of the nurses would come in and pray with me, and the doctors were just being so faithful, thanking God every day and blessing God every day. It was just, I couldn't have been in a better place.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. A lot of times they say that these two realms don't have that crossover, where science is on one side and faith is on the other, and but it seems as they are intertwined at the end of the day.
Well, if God didn't want science and faith to be intertwined, he wouldn't allow us to get smart enough to study it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all God.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, honestly, again, such a inspiration for your story. It seems like throughout this entire story, there's been multiple different instances where if one thing didn't kind of line up, or if one thing changed a little bit, that you might not be here.
Yeah, if my wife wouldn't have fought for me and had them send the records when they did, if they'd have sent them the next day, I would be gone.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Or if she wouldn't have not said in her fight to will you back to life, I think is really a testament to, I guess, the story that you guys have.
Yeah. And I've got to give a shout out to my mother-in-law, my wife's mother. She's a saint, one of the most wonderful women that I know. And between her and my wife, I never had a day at Mayo that one of them was not in the room with me.
Mm-hmm. Let me kind of change directions a little bit. Why do you think that you're here? So this kind of ties into potentially purpose, right? So you have all of these things that have happened and all these things that have transpired. What is your purpose now? Obviously, before when you were a nurse, you were out to help people, right?
Yeah.
And I believe you had a brief stint in real estate, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Did you do some real estate?
Well, I got my real estate license back in December.
That's right.
Before I got sick.
Right before.
Yeah.
Maybe that's God saying that's not the path.
Yeah. Well, or maybe
even more, right?
Yeah.
So for you, how has your purpose changed during this time?
Well, I know that every single day is a gift. So you need to treat it that way. You wake up on Monday morning, you go to work, and you just don't want to go and in a bad attitude. That's not the way you need to live your life. You need to go to work because you woke up this morning. God blessed you with another day. So go and live that day, whether you're working, whether you're off. Spend time with family. And another thing that I have learned is time is more important than things. Spending time with someone is better than buying them a Corvette or anything like that. Which, if you want to buy me one, that's perfectly fine. But then I'll spend some more time with you.
I still love the sense of humor. For very early on when you came to the restaurant at So Yummy Asian Kitchen, at the bar, you were always cutting up, having a great time, and it seems like that's still very present. And I'm so happy that that is still there. One of the questions that I would continue to have is, as a individual that has come so close to death, how do you take that next step now? What does the future hold for Matt?
I'm not sure. I just know that I'm going to be thankful for every day that I have, and and I think that's why I'm here, is um to tell other people
Mm.
that same thing, is to live every day like it's your last, because you don't know. And in my line of work since 1992, I've seen young and old come and go, and so you never know when's going to be your last day. So you don't need to live in anger, you don't need to live in fear, and you need to live it with some jubilee and some forgiveness
Mm.
every day of your life.
Matt, I want to thank you for spending some time. Thank you for inspiring, I guess, me, the world, whoever's listening. I think, just sitting across from you the entire time that you were telling your story, obviously like chills up and down the spine. It's honestly amazing to be sitting across from you. And I think that, the words of wisdom that you have, I'm excited for today. I mean, the rest of the day is going to be like perfect for me because I know, right, to be thankful. And I think that more than anything, your story is going to go out there and inspire thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions.
Yeah. So if you're having a miserable day or a bad day, just remember that you're healthy and you're still alive,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a gift.
Amen to that.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for stopping by for the show. Is there anything else that you would might want to tell the people out there?
Just take time to keep yourself healthy, because I think that is one thing that saved me. Is I actually was in fairly decent shape when I got sick for my age,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's one thing that did save me. So get out and enjoy the outdoors. Um, Take a walk, go fishing with your kids.
Mm.
Um, Hug your wife, dance with your wife.
Love that.
Yeah, and just love each other. Yeah.
Well, that's the show. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Good to be here.
Yep, absolutely.